Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the Golden Sombrero Show. Today is Saturday, February 13th, Valentine's Day Eve, some might say. I'm Dominic Stern, joined by Cole Bradley, Ryan Blank. On today's show, we're going to discuss our top five first basemen and second basemen in the MLB right now, as well as discussing some of the smaller moves with the trade that Ryan's Royals made and everything that's gone down in the MLB. So, Cole, Ryan, how are you guys doing this morning?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm tired, but I'm feeling good.
I feel that. I'm tired too.
Aren't we all? Very busy college lives we live. So, Ryan, your Royals, they made the headlining move this week, acquiring Andrew Benintendi. They gave up prospect outfielder Franchy Cordero and Khalil Lee, and they acquired Andrew Benintendi, and the Mets were the team that received Khalil Lee, and the Red Sox received Franchy Cordero, and then the Mets also sent a pitching prospect over to the Red Sox, and each team will receive a player to be named later. So, Ryan, I know you're a big fan of this trade. Tell us why.
First off, I've always been an Andrew Benintendi fan. That's just always been someone that I've really liked. Plus, I think it's a big acquisition to get someone like Andrew Benintendi to take over left field when Alex Gordon's gone. A big staple of the team and left field. You can't just put anyone out in left field with the Royals. And getting someone like Benintendi is big to take on that role. He's got a great glove. He's been a two-time Gold Glove finalist. He's just lost them both to Gordon. And looking at his bat, yeah, he struggled last year. He only played in 14 games because he got hurt. But go and look at 2018. He hit 290 with 16 home runs and 87 RBIs. Then look at 2017, hit 271 with 20 home runs and 90 RBIs. That's perfect. That is all the Royals need is offensive production from a left-handed bat. Dayton Moore, the Royals general manager, was very keen on going out and getting an outfielder and a left-handed bat. And he just got both in Andrew Benintendi, and he's got a lot to offer through the offensive side and defensive side. So I'm very excited. This move also shows that the Royals are making moves and are trying to get closer and closer to contending.
Cole, what do you think of this trade?
I mean, I have sort of the same thoughts as Ryan. I mean, they get a pretty solid replacement out in left field for obviously the retiring Alex Gordon. You can't really argue with that. That's what they needed. I don't think and I think Ryan can probably agree with this. I don't think the Royals are a team that's going to be good right now. I don't think they're going to be necessarily good next year or the year after that. I think they're sort of just trying to find their identity before they get good again. And I think he's maybe a guy who could potentially be. We'll see what happens. I mean, maybe this is a 1-2 year kind of thing, but maybe he's a guy who could potentially, become the next, centerpiece of the team or, be a really nice focal point at the top of their order for years to come. Because, I mean, he does have a pretty solid bat. He did struggle this year. I think he struggled over the past couple of years, but he's no slouch defensively in left field, which that's what Alex Gordon was as well. He was definitely probably one of, if not the best defensive left fielder of his time. And so I think that, again, this is definitely a good move for them, bringing in a guy who can play left field. And, he doesn't 100% fill those shoes, but he's at least going to, bridge that gap, I guess. So I think it's a good move. I like it.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good move for the Royals. It seemed like they had a lot of players who were vying for that outfield spot. So to move on from Cordero and also move on from a prospect at the same time that wasn't quite ready to get up to the majors in Khalil Lee, I think it was a good move for the Royals. It opens up a spot, and you bring in Benintendi, who is better than Franchy Cordero. I've had the pleasure of watching Franchy Cordero several times as a Padre fan. Very talented guy, walking injury, which is very unfortunate for Cordero. And he's also just not good defensively, which is a true shame because he's so fast. If the Red Sox can work on that with him, that would be potentially a very promising thing because he's fast, he's got an arm, plus power. I mean, I watched him hit a 490-foot home run against Cole, your Diamondbacks. So he's certainly a player who is capable of doing that. And the Red Sox find themselves in a weird spot, and they're taking on a chance. And if it pays off for them, it could be the difference of them, being a fourth or fifth place team in the American League East or moving up to third and second, passing who we think could be third or second in the Rays, the Blue Jays, stuff like that. Because I agree with you guys. Benintendi's a lot better. He's going to be better than what he was in 2020. I always remember that diving catch that he made in, I believe it was game 4 of the ALCS when Alex Bregman hit that line drive. And if Benintendi doesn't catch it, I think they probably lose. That ball gets to the wall, but he caught it, so they ended up winning the game. And he's an incredible player and one that I think gives the Royals a solid shot at winning around 75 games this year. They're not there yet, but potentially next year with a very young and up and coming.
I say next year.
They could be competing for a wild card spot. It's a big could.
I agree.
Then,
that losing a guy like Cordero is not a big deal because the Royals acquired him in the Tim Hill trade from San Diego, and he didn't play much last year because he hurt his wrist. And when he did play, he was very poor in the outfield, and he could not get – he bat, I think, sub 200. He didn't do much. So I think he's a project for the Red Sox, but they're a team that's nowhere close to really doing anything. They're looking to rebuild. So maybe that's going to be a good spot for him. As for Khalil Lee, that one stung a little bit. He was the number 8 prospect, but he is a very, very talented player. He has a great bat. He's got a lot of speed. I really like Khalil Lee, but getting a guy like Andrew Benintendi, it's worth it to get him to give up Khalil Lee.
Right. You got to give up good players to get good players back in return, and that was certainly the case for this trade. So let's talk about a couple of free agency signings in baseball as we are getting closer. Pitchers and catchers do report this week, which is absolutely fantastic to hear. But a team that has had a very struggling bullpen over the last couple of years, the Philadelphia Phillies, they made a bullpen move. They signed Brandon Kinsler to a minor league contract that will pay him north of $2 million if he does make the MLB roster, and I'm going to tell you right now, he will.
Especially about bullpen, he easily will.
Right. What do you guys think about the signing? Ryan, I'll start with you.
I got to give the Phillies a lot of credit. They've gone out and gotten a few arms for the bullpen, which is big because that bullpen last year, in the past couple of years, has been atrocious. They've got some arms in the starting rotation, and they've had them. It's just they haven't been able to stay healthy. Health is a key right now for that team. And to be able to add some guys to the bullpen, I think it's going to help them try to make a push for second place or even a wild card spot in the National League.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a really solid move. Kinsler was good last year with the Marlins, 12 saves, sub 2.5, and just north of 24 innings. He's not your, prototypical closer where he blows it by you 95 plus. He's sort of he gets you to make contact, and that's how he gets you out. And I like that. And will he be their closer? I don't know. He might be in that mix. I know Archie Bradley could also be their closer. But that's definitely a nice piece for their back end. And I think that's going to help them win a lot more games this year. Because like you guys said, their bullpen has been the biggest issue. I think of any team. Really, I think if any team had a weaker bullpen, I don't know if there's any team that had a weaker bullpen coming into this offseason, and they definitely got better. So that's really at the end of the day what matters. And I think this is a really solid move. Again, the numbers back it up too. So definitely one of the more underrated right-handed relievers in the game.
Yeah, Rockies, I would put them up there with the Phillies for sure. 2.22 ERA last year in 24 innings. Only 14 strikeouts, not a strikeout guy, but he gets the job done. And he was a big part of that Marlins bullpen that was very solid for them last year that kind of propelled them to exceeding expectations. And he's going to be a player that the Marlins will miss this upcoming season. Padres once again made another move, signing Mark Melancon. The financial details have not yet been released, but I'd guess it's around $7 million. I guess I'll start. I think this is a low-risk, high-reward signing, considering it's going to be a one-year deal. Melancon, very solid the last couple of years after getting out of San Francisco, and he's been a very reliable reliever for the vast majority of his career. Had some not so great years in San Francisco. He's getting up in age. He's going to be 30. He's going to be 35 or 36 when the season starts. 35 right now, and 2.78 ERA last year, 2.85 career ERA in 600 innings. So very reliable reliever. Once again, a guy not going to strike out a lot of guys in 22 innings, 14 strikeouts, very similar to Kinsler. Got that cutter curveball matchup, and it became more and more obvious that Trevor Rosenthal, who I assume we're going to be talking about next week as a free agent signing, was going to be too expensive for the Padres after all the moves the Padres made this offseason. Already have a top 5 payroll in baseball, so I wasn't too surprised to see the Padres go out and get a different arm in the bullpen, and I'm excited to watch Melancon pitch for the Padres. Cole, Ryan, what did you think of this?
Well, another really underrated right-handed arm in the game. I think he's definitely going to help them out in their back end of the pen. Like you said, low risk, high reward. That's the one thing about those 1-year deals where you can sign them to $7 million, $10 million. I mean, you don't want to go too crazy, but like a $7 million deal for a bullpen arm doesn't seem that crazy when it's only 1 year. I mean, this is very low risk, and he could end up being one of, if not their better relievers this upcoming season. But I'll be interested to see where Trevor Rosenthal goes. Actually, now that that's the case, I think that I thought he was a lock to stay there, but I guess not. I mean, we'll find out. Maybe they do have a little bit more cash at the bottom of the barrel there to re-sign him. Probably not, but I'd be interested to see that. But in whatever which case, this is definitely not. This definitely tells me that they're not getting worse. They're still trying to help fill that void because he was really good for them last year. But Melancon was good last year as well.
Yeah, I actually like the steal for the Padres. Getting a guy like Melancon, who's really established himself with the Braves after getting a big contract and really struggling once he went to the Giants. So it's great to see him reestablish himself. And I think he's going to be a very good piece of the bullpen for the Padres, who right now just need bullpen arms. So I think it's a low risk, high reward type signing, and I really think that's going to work out well.
I hope it does too, for my sake. Then the signing, bullpen arm in the NL West. Jake McGee signs a 1-year, $7 million deal with the San Francisco Giants. He's been one of the best left-handed relief pitchers in all of baseball for a large majority of his pretty solid career. What do you guys think of this one? Ryan, I'll start with you.
You know, it's interesting to me about Jake McGee because he struggled, and I just think it's the Coors effect. Struggled a lot when he was in Colorado, and then really finds his groove once he goes to LA, goes 3-1 with a 2.66 ERA. He was really, really good. And I think with him staying in the NL West and going to a team like the Giants, who are an up-and-coming team, who are looking in the right direction, getting a guy like McGee, a left-handed arm out of the bullpen, I think it's going to be really good to see. Hopefully he can pitch like he did with the Dodgers, but regardless, he was very good last year, and I think that it could continue again this year.
Yeah, Jake McGee was really good last year with the Dodgers, and like Ryan said, I mean, once he left Coors Field, it was all sunshine and rainbows because it was anything but that in Colorado. But the one thing that concerns me, I will say about Jake McGee, and it didn't really end up biting him in the butt this past year, but he throws a lot of fastballs. In fact, I think 95% of the pitches he threw last year were fastballs. I saw a stat earlier on Twitter the other day saying that I think he only threw like 10 sliders last year. And I think if you're going to pitch in the National League West, now it did work out for him, obviously, and I think if that's his bread and butter, then he should stick with it. But I think he should definitely start thinking about implementing at least one other pitch in his arsenal again. I think with the Giants, that's a ballpark he's definitely going to thrive in, as really any pitcher does. But I think in order for him to continue to be successful in the league, I think he needs to maybe trust his secondary a little bit more. That's just because I think every reliever and every pitcher in general should have at least 2 pitches. But that's definitely one thing that sticks out to me. But yeah, this is a great signing. He had 33 Ks in 20 and a third innings last year with LA. Like that's ridiculous. Definitely a strikeout guy. He does have it's no wonder he throws his fastball so dang much because he's got a pretty dang good one. I think that's a really solid sign for the Giants. I think the Giants are a team that's also going to be one to watch out for. Maybe not this year, but the year after, because they have potential to have a huge amount of revenue or payroll coming off the books next year. And they've made some solid moves this year. They went out, they got him, they got Tommy La Stella. So I'd sort of keep an eye out for the Giants if I'm watching this year.
Also, I think the future for them. They've got some big contracts coming up off the books this upcoming offseason with Belt and Crawford, so they could be in on trying to get some of the big free agents next year as well.
Yeah, I think they're potentially 6th or 7th or 8th best team in the National League. So if the playoffs do get expanded, I think they're one of those teams that their playoff chances goes up dramatically. So, I agree. They're an interesting team to watch. And I'm on Baseball Savant. Cole, 96.4% of his pitches last year were fastballs, which is absolutely nuts. I wish I would have been able to do that in my pitching days, but I only threw 73 miles an hour. So pretty hard to do that when you throw that hard. 2 more signings we'll talk about. First one, Yadier Molina returns to the Cardinals. It was a matter of time, let's be completely honest. I think he got paid $9 million, which is pretty hefty considering how old he is, but he's just that veteran presence back there who's worked with the pitching staff, worked with the coaching staff before, so it's really hard to truly value a guy like that. So, Cole, what do you think of this?
Yeah, Yadi's their guy. Yadi's their rock. It's crazy to think that he's been there for, almost as long as I personally have been watching baseball. That's how long he's virtually been their catcher. And he knows that pitching staff he gets paid to do it, funny enough. He's really good with Wainwright. I think that's also part of the reason Wainwright came back is because he probably was under the impression that, hey, we're going to bring back Yadi. I honestly don't think he would have re-signed if Yadi wasn't going to come back. That just speaks to his talent and, what he's been able to do from a mental standpoint for this pitching staff for so many years. He's their leader. He's just the guy. I personally don't ever see him wearing another jersey. He's just one of those guys. So yeah, like you said, it was just kind of a matter of time, and that's really all I have to say about it. I think he'll be pretty solid again for them this next year. He always seemingly is. And even if he doesn't perform consistently in the regular season, he's always been very good in the postseason. So definitely a guy to watch out for then. But yeah, this is just capping off what has been a pretty good offseason for the Cardinals. The trade for Arenado alone was a win. So definitely, a no-brainer, like you guys said.
Ryan?
I really like this move. This is the move that should have been made a while ago. Glad it got done. Like you said, Cole, Yadier Molina is the type of player that I don't ever see in another uniform. I don't think he can go to a team and play in another uniform. He's the rock. He is their guy. He has been their guy behind the plate for years. He's one of the best defensive catchers of all time. He was one of the best hitters at his position for a while. Yadi's one of the best catchers ever, and he continues to be a productive piece the more and more he ages. He's turning 38. He's going to be 38, and he's still going to be doing what he's been doing, and it's big to have him back because the Cardinals rely on him to be that guy, to be the veteran leader, and to be the guy and the dominant force behind the plate. So, and he lives up to it each and every year. So I really like the deal. I don't think the money's insane.
Yeah, like I said, it's just hard to value what he does on a dollar perspective. You can't like look at the stats and all that stuff to say, well, he's worth this amount of money. But one stat that's telling to me is just looking at the Cardinals roster from last year and looking at their pitching stats. And obviously, they have a talented pitching staff, and this isn't just what Yadier Molina does, but their entire pitching staff last year had a 112 ERA plus, which means their pitching staff was 12% better than average, which I think is pretty telling, and that's pretty impressive. So, shout out Yachty. I think he's a Hall of Famer. That's a topic for a different time. But I don't know easily, but he should get in. So, that is basically what happened over the last couple of weeks. So, let's get into our positional rankings. We got a lot of time, so we can talk about them thoroughly. Let's start with first base because these ones, the names were definitely a little easier to come by. So let's start with our number 5 first baseman. Ryan, let's start with you. Who do you have at number 5 for your top 5 first basemen right now?
This was tough. There are a lot of guys that I could have put here, but I actually went with Max Muncy. I think Muncy is the type of guy who's got a lot of pop in his bat. And I know you're shaking your head because you probably disagree, not just on the fan bias, but I like Max Muncy. I think he's a key piece to that Dodger lineup, and I think that if Justin Turner were to not return to the Dodgers, he's going to be a guy who's going to step up and take on that loss of his offensive role.
He's not in my top 5. He was close. I mean, I'm not going to fault you for that, but he was not in my top 5. Cole, who do you have at number 5?
So this one, and like Ryan said, this is tough because for whatever reason, first base, just looking at it, is like positionally the weakest it's been in a while.
Yes.
I don't say that like in spite of any of these guys. I still think these guys are really good. I just feel like a lot of them are hitting a point in time. Either they're getting older or they're just not who they used to be. Number 5 for me really speaks to this because I went with Anthony Rizzo. And the reason why I went with Anthony Rizzo is because, yes, this past year was not great for him, only 11 homers and 24 RBIs. And he hit 222. He still got on base at a 342 clip, which, I mean, we can talk about how good of an on-base presence he is all day. But, like, if you look at each of the last few years before that, I mean, 27 home runs, 94 RBIs, 25 home runs, 101 RBIs, 283 average, with OBPs at least at 350, if not 380. The guy's an on-base machine. He's been very steady and very, consistent, I feel like, for the years that he's been in the league. And again, I don't really think you can argue with that. Yes, granted, this wasn't the best year of his life, but it wasn't for a lot of people. And yeah, I mean, it's just really hard to argue with his numbers, and it's crazy to think that he's been doing this for a while now. So yeah, Rizzo definitely. Oh, and he's also been a pretty solid defender over at first base as well. He's one of the better ones at that position. I mean, first base is a pretty easy position to play, but defense does speak a lot, and I value that personally a lot as well. So he's my number 5.
I have Rizzo at 6. It was a tough choice between him and Matt Olson for number 5 for me because both guys we know are really good fielders, possess a ton of power, good guys at getting on base. But to me, when I looked at it, I had to decide if I were to take a first baseman for the next 3 years, who would I rather take, Matt Olson or Anthony Rizzo? I think there's a couple of other factors, not just based on stats, but I'd lean towards Olson. Olson has won 2 Gold Gloves in the past 3 years, was a finalist for it again in 2020. Obviously, Gold Gloves aren't the best way to determine a fielder's status. Our listeners know how I feel about Gold Gloves. But if you watch him, he's so good at first base. He gets on base. You look at the batting average for his 2020 season. You'll say, oh, he had a bad year. And I mean, yeah, it wasn't a good year for Matt Olson, hitting 195 in all 60 games. That's not great. But 310 on base percentage. He was still getting on base. Obviously, not at a rate that he would like to, but he was still doing it. The 424 slugging percentage in 2020 was the lowest of his career since his 2016 season, where he only made 11 games and had 28 plate appearances. So, not a good year. It wasn't. But I believe I had him at number 3 last year, and he still showed me he's going to get on base. He's going to hit home runs. He's going to play really good defense. And for that reason, I'm still going to keep him in my top 5. It is partially, in fact, because I think a lot of first basemen had down years, obviously besides the 2 MVPs that we'll talk about in a little bit. But I decided to keep Olson at 5. It was tough. So let's go to number 4. Cole, who's your number 4 first baseman right now?
This was sort of another tough one for me, and not necessarily because I didn't know whether to keep him outside of the top 5, but I didn't know really where to place him inside the top 5, and that's Luke Voit. I think Luke Voit has come on strong as one of the better offensive first basemen, not even just first baseman, but just offensive players in our game today. The dude's got tons of power. He hit 22 home runs in 56 games. That's just ridiculous. He hit 21 and 118 in 2019. Like, he literally hit more home runs in, like, I think a third of the games this past year, which is just insane. His power is off the charts. He's hit above 260 each of the last 2 years. He had a good OBP definitely in 2019 as well. And I mean, he was definitely an MVP candidate to say the least this past year, 948 OPS. He's not really the defender that guys like Rizzo and Olsen are, and that's definitely not helping his cause, at least in my opinion. But first base is a position where, you know, most guys are already sacrificing the offense or the defense so they can be more of an offensive presence. And Luke Voit has sort of come out of nowhere and has just sort of quietly submitted himself as one of the better guys offensively at that spot. So I think it's really hard to argue with that. And he's definitely going to continue to be one of the better, I feel like, offensive first baseman, as long as he's with the Yankees at least in this game. So I have him at number 4.
I agree. I have Luke Voit at 4. I think that what hurts him for me is his fielding. He's not a very good fielder, and I think I have to value both fielding and hitting. So that's my main reason. But he really came onto the scene this year, hitting 22 home runs in 56 games. Yeah, he was fine last year, hitting 263 and 21 home runs in 19, but I need to see more. I can't just be happy with 1 year of his hitting dominance. So if I can get another year of him hitting 270s with 20-plus home runs, then, yeah, that's definitely what I would love to see. But also his fielding has got to improve. So I have him at 4.
I also have Luke Voit at 4. I'm not sure if I picked up on it. I know you guys are talking about his power, but he led all of the majors in home runs last year. So he's had a over 100 OPS plus for every year since he's been traded from St. Louis to the Yankees. Health has been the big question for him. He finally stayed healthy in 2020, and we saw what he could do. Now, if he does this again in a full season, he could pass the guys like, I'm assuming our top 3s are all Goldschmidt, Abreu, and Freeman in some sort of order that we'll figure out. If he does it again, he could pass those guys. But for now, I agree. I think 4 is the right spot for him. So, like I said, I think that we're going to have Goldschmidt, Abreu, and Freeman in our top 3. Ryan, I'll start with you. Who did you put at number 3?
Goldschmidt. I think that he is still one of the best hitting first basemen in the league, consistently hitting over 300, over 290, 300. Take out 2019 when he hit 260, but that year he still hit 34 home runs and had 97 RBIs. So I think Goldschmidt has been one of the best first basemen in the league. He's a terrific fielder as well, one of the best fielding first basemen. And then pair with his great bat, I think that he is set to be a very, very, very big piece for the next few years with the Cardinals, especially with the Arenado acquisition. So I've always been a Paul Goldschmidt fan, and I think that he is by far a top 3 first baseman. With his glove, he's easily top 3, and then with a bat to pair it, you have a case where you can put him over Jose Abreu.
Cool. Yeah, ditto. Paul Goldschmidt at 3. Like you said, I mean, he's just the all-around baseball player. He plays great defense. He's never been this over-the-top, kind of guy. He's always flown under the radar. Offensively, like you said, he's one of the best at what he does. He hit 304 this past year with a 417 on base. Consistently in the high 800s to low 900s as far as OPS is concerned. He's the all-around. I mein, he's everything, in my opinion, that you want in a baseball player. He's just so good at what he does, and he does it so quietly. Ryan pretty much covered it, but yeah, Goldschmidt at 3.
Nope. I put Jose Abreu at 3. I think that highly of Paul Goldschmidt to put him at number 2. And listen, they're both really good, like really good right-handed hitters. And if you're a Chicago White Sox fan, you're probably going to think Abreu's better than him. And I completely understand your argument, and I completely understand your guys' argument too. But just looking at their past couple of years, I mean, Abreu was better in 2020 than Paul Goldschmidt. Obviously, Abreu won the American League MVP. But Paul Goldschmidt put up 142 OPS plus, was basically the only consistently good hitter for the St. Louis Cardinals, and he was that guy. And I look at it, Jose Abreu had a ton of bats in that order to kind of protect him. Paul Goldschmidt didn't have that. In 2019, both had solid years, but they weren't that good. And you look at the years previous to that, Paul Goldschmidt was better than Jose Abreu, and Paul Goldschmidt wins Gold Gloves and is a better defender at first base than Jose Abreu. So because of that, I decided to keep Paul Goldschmidt ahead of Jose Abreu, but it's so close. I could have completely put Abreu in front of him, but I opted to put Paul Goldschmidt at 2, Jose Abreu at 3. So do I assume that you guys have Jose Abreu as your number 2 first baseman in all of baseball?
Yes. RBI machine. He is an insane hitter. He has had over 100 RBIs in 5 of his 7 seasons. And if there's more than 60 games this year, he easily gets over 100 because he had 60 RBIs in 60 games, 76 hits, 19 home runs, career high in slugging percentage. He was insane this year. He had a career year, and I definitely think that he is going to continue that pace. Of course, his glove kind of hurts him a little bit, but overall, he's still a beast at the plate.
Yeah, I 100% agree. His career slash line is 294, 350, and 520. That's ridiculous. That's just, as far as offense is concerned, that's as good as it gets. Before he won the MVP, I thought he was the most underrated player in baseball. I think he was slept on for so many years. The guy was just so consistent, putting up, really good numbers every single year. I really don't think I just don't think you can argue with that. I think he gets the number 2 nod for me solely because of this past year. I think as of right now, that was enough to slide him ahead of Goldie, but next year could be a completely different story. I just think Jose Abreu has always been, ever since he came up, one of the better players in baseball. And I'm glad he got his recognition this year, winning the MVP.
Yeah, maybe I'm a fool for putting Abreu behind Goldschmidt, but they're both really good, so I don't feel too bad. Number 1, it's Freddie Freeman. He's been one of the best players in all baseball for a long time. He finally got over the hump and put it above everyone else in winning the MVP. He'd finished in 8th in 2019, 4th in 2018, 6th in 2016, and 5th in 2013. So he finally got the MVP, MV-free, as the Braves fans were calling him. He was a big part of the Braves' postseason run. It was funny. Anytime the Braves won their postseason games against the Dodgers, he did really well. The games where he didn't do well, guess who won those games, guys? The Dodgers. Very important piece of that lineup. What else you guys got to say about Freddie Freeman?
I mean, outside of him just being the best at what he does, not much. He's just such a solid hitter. I mean, he's like Jose Abreu but better, I guess, and from the left side. I mean, if this last year wasn't good enough, I mean, 38 home runs, 295 average a year ago. He is an extra base hit machine. The guy averages like 35 plus doubles a season. That's a lot. He's always been so consistent, so good with the bat. And like you said, he finally got over the hump this year and won his MVP. And this past year was just such a crazy story for him because, I mean, he was on his deathbed with COVID before the season started. Came back, won the MVP. That's crazy. That's a really cool story. Definitely deserving. I mean, outside of that, I think. I mean, while we're just talking about it, I think it's criminal that he's only been to the All-Star game 4 times. He should definitely have been in more than that. Definitely one of the best hitters in our game, probably one of the better hitters of our generation. So, he's undisputedly number 1.
What else can I say to that? Undisputed. Easy. Last year, he had 23 doubles in 60 games. He hit 341, had 53 RBIs, led the National League in runs, had 73 hits. That's the definition of elite. He is an insane hitter. He's always been a very consistent hitter. His career line is 295, 380, 383, and 509. That's terrific. And looking at it, his worst season, honestly, came in 2015. Since then, the worst average he has had is 295, and that was in 2019, where he slashed 38 home runs and 121 RBIs. Very consistent hitter, very solid hitter, easily the best first baseman. And then he's got the glove to pair with it. You're not going to find anyone better than Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, and it was an easy choice, and I'm glad he finally got that MVP. We'll see if the Braves can get over the hump now that Freddie Freeman has got over the hump, winning the MVP. So let's move. Let's continue to move across the infield. We gave our shortstop rankings last week, our third base rankings last week as well, and we just gave our top 5 first baseman rankings. So we've got one more infield position at second base, and this position is really tough to rank because second base, like Cole mentioned off air, not a lot of guys that are good are primary second baseman. Now, there's a very clear top 2 here. For me, there's a guy who's going to be moving to second base this year that I think will be a top 5 guy, and there's a couple of guys that play second base, but it's not necessarily their primary position. They would easily be on this list. Guys like Whit Merrifield or Ketel Marte would easily be in this list, but we assume they'll be playing the outfield next year, so they'll have to make our rankings elsewhere. But let's start with our top 5 second basemen. Cole, you started our Freddie Freeman conversation, so I'm going to go to Ryan first. Ryan, who do you think is the 5th best second baseman in baseball right now?
You guys are going to disagree with me probably. I'm going Ozzie Albies. I really like Ozzie. I think that he's going to have a big year. He had a very good playoffs. He was a big piece of the playoff run for the Braves. And looking at a guy who is a strict second baseman, I love Ozzie Albies. I think he's going to be a breakout candidate this year, and you could see him become even more of a star than what he has been since he came up.
I'm surprised you have him that low. I'm curious to see who you have in front of him.
Really? Also, spoiler, I put Ketel Marte on here.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, all right. That's one name I would consider putting in front of him. Anyways, all right, Cole, who do you have at number 5 for your top 5 second baseman right now?
So once again, I actually expect this to be a position that a lot of us are probably all over the board on. I
Yes.
think that's how this position works. Like we've said, most guys who play this spot don't really stay here, and if they do, then obviously they're probably going to be in the top 5. But it's one of the weaker positions in baseball. But even with that being said, there's definitely some good talent here. My number 5 is Colton Wong. And Colton Wong gets on my list. I mean, he could get on my list solely because of his defense. I think he's probably one of the best, if not the best, defensive second baseman in the game of baseball. He's been underrated for so many years. And while he doesn't light it up with the bat in his hand, he's still had seasons where he's hit above 280. He gets on base for an above 370 clip. Just a really solid player. I think he'll be pretty good with the Brewers this year. I mean, he knows that division really well because he's played in it since 2013 with the Cardinals. But yeah, I think Colton Wong has been slept on for a lot of years, and I think again, just with his glove alone, he's definitely deserving to be on this list. So I have him at number 5.
Yeah, I thought about putting him on my list. I certainly think he's a very talented player. Great signing for the Brewers, as we talked about last week, but he did not make my top 5. Just out on the edge, probably right around 6, 7, 8. My top 5, I'm not sure if you guys have him on this list. I know he was certainly on all of our lists last year. Had a down year in 2020. It's Jose Altuve. I still value him as a top 5 second baseman in baseball. And you look at his stats last year: 219 batting average, 286 OBP, 344 slugging percentage, and a lot of distractions going on that year for the Houston Astros, of course, with the cheating scandal. So we knew their numbers were going to come down, but you look at his numbers in the years prior, they're so good. And then you look at what he did in the postseason, and I think that's more of an indicative that he's still a good hitter. He just didn't play well in the regular season. Just ask Oakland. I mean, he destroyed them in the division series. He hit 400 with a 526 OBP, 800 slugging percentage that included 2 home runs and 5 RBIs when he went 6 of 15. And then in the ALCS against the very loaded pitching staff against Tampa Bay, he hit 462 with a 563 OBP and an 885 slugging percentage, where he hit 3 home runs in the 7 games for 5 RBIs, drew 6 walks in 26 at-bats. So I still have him in my top 5. If you guys left him out, I completely understand, because he was just not good in the 2020 regular season. All right, Colt, let's move on to you. Who is your number 4 second baseman in baseball right now?
I have this is where I have Ozzy Albies. I really like him. I think he's definitely one of those mainstay guys at that position, and I mean, he definitely can work it with the glove. He is also really good with the bat. 6 home runs this past year, 271. Obviously, in 2019, 24 homers, 86 ribbies, 295. That's just an amazing season. He also had 189 hits, which if that didn't lead the National League, it definitely was up there. Yeah, a hit machine kind of guy, can get on base a lot. Definitely one of the better guys at this position. And he's one of those guys I think who's going to just stay there for a long time. And he could probably play shortstop, but they're definitely not going to need him to. With Dansby Swanson over there and guys like that, he's definitely going to be, I think, a guy who stays at second base for a long time. So he could be someone who makes at least my list for years to come for sure. And if he continues to put up numbers like, at least 270. Now he didn't get on base that much this past year. His OBP definitely took a hit, dropped all the way to 306. But I think he definitely has the capability of being more consistent. And I think he's going to be really good for the Braves or whoever else has him for years to come.
My number 4, Brandon Lau. I think he's a big piece of that Rays lineup. Last year, his average does not tell the whole story. He had 269, but his on-base percentage was at a career high, was at 362. He had 14 home runs. He had 9 doubles, 37 RBIs. He is a big piece of that Rays lineup that doesn't have a ton of power. So I think that having a guy like Brandon Lau, who could be a very good fielding second baseman, also has a lot of power.
Yeah. And Cole, I'm very curious to see who you have in front of Ozzy Albies. My number 4 is a player who played shortstop in years prior, but when he moved teams this offseason as a free agent, it was announced that the team views him as their second baseman for this upcoming season. My number 4 second baseman is Marcus Semien of the Toronto Blue Jays. He's going to be playing second base this year. I opted to put him in my second base rankings because I think that's where he's going to play this year. And you look at his 2019 season, that was the best year of his career. Gold Glove candidate with a 140 OPS plus. Super durable for them. Incredible year. And then in 2020, Semien was dealing with injuries. He played through them. He was able to get through it, but it definitely hindered his performance. And he kind of came back to where he was in years prior. It's a slightly below average hitter. I think he'll get back above an average hitter and play very good defense as his defense was vastly improved as his career has gone on. I think Semien's going to be a top 5 second baseman, and I'm going to slot him in at number 4. I don't think any of you guys might have him on the list, but I viewed him as a second baseman, so I decided to put him in my top 5. So, Colt, who is your top 3 second baseman?
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I have, and I'm already, because you guys are mentioning names that I kind of forgot about, but I figured we'd be all over the board here, and that's definitely fine. I have Jose Altuve at number 3. Dom, I agree with you. I think just because of one down year, you cannot throw this man to the curb. He definitely had a really good postseason. I think he bounced back for sure. But I mean, cheater or not, even before 2017, the guy was still putting up MVP caliber numbers. 2016 All-Star, 24 homers, 96 RBIs. He's hit 300, it seems like, almost every year. And if he's not hitting 300, he's at least hitting in the 290s pretty much every year except this past season. He's also been extremely good at defense. Now, he definitely had the yips, I think, in that ALCS this past year, but he's just one of the best at his position for sure. I don't think 1 year is going to change that. I think he's going to get back on his trajectory this next year. He may not be the same hitter that he was, but I still don't think that alone is the reason why you have to kick him to the curb. He's still definitely top 3 for me. I think it's been that way for a while. So yeah, he's my number 3.
Ryan, who's your number 3?
I actually just made the switch because you mentioned it before with Ketel Marte not being in there. I actually flipped him out with Altuve because I agree with you guys. I think that there was a lot of drama and a lot of situational crap, I would say, when it comes to that Houston team at the start of the season. And he turned it on. Yeah, he struggled mightily in the regular season. He did. But the postseason, I think, was a huge indication of what he can and probably will do. He was huge for that team who got past the A's and torched them. He was a big piece. I think that the playoffs are just a sample size of what you're going to see from him in this year and in the upcoming years.
All right. I guess I was the one who undervalued Jose Altuve, but there we are. My number 3, you guys have already mentioned him. Brandon Lau, Tampa Bay Rays, second baseman. Very impressive rookie season in 2019. Finished 3rd place in Rookie of the Year voting with an 850 OPS, 125 OPS plus, and playing at the Trop. Those are certainly impressive numbers. In 2020, he improved in everything but his batting average, which, as I've mentioned several times before, is not the best stat to look at a player when determining how good they are. His OBP went from 336 to 362. His slugging percentage went from 514 to 554, and he was a big part of the reason why the Rays won the division, got the number 1 seed in the American League, and ended up winning the American League, and we're just 2 games away from being crowned as World Series champions. Damn you, Dodgers. Brandon Lau is also a very good fielding second baseman. Not Gold Glove caliber, but very solid, and you have to mention his defense because it's good enough. So I put him at number 3. Interested to see where he goes from here. He's only used 2 years of service time so far, so he's going to be a Ray for the next couple of years. until they trade him because that's what they do. But I decided to go Brandon Lau at 3. Ryan, we go to you for your number 2 second baseman in all of baseball right now.
Mainly not a second baseman, but I think he's going to move there this year. Give me Jeff McNeil. I think Jeff McNeil is a very good ball player. I think he's going to be a guy that definitely makes that leap as the second baseman because Cano's not going to be playing. He's suspended. Hopefully his career's done. You both know my feelings on Robinson Cano. But I really like Jeff McNeil. Last year, hit 311 with 14 doubles, 23 RBIs in 52 games. He was great as a piece of that lineup for the Mets, and I think he's going to flourish as their second baseman. So I'm going to go with Jeff McNeil.
Yeah, I have Jeff McNeil number 2 as well. He's like the blue-collar baseball player, if you ask me. He plays anywhere you want him to. He's not a real flashy guy. He just goes out there and he plays. He's hit 300 ever since he came into the league. That in and of itself is definitely something to appreciate. And like you guys said, I think he's going to move to second base full time this year, with obviously Cano being on his way out or just being suspended for the time being. And I think he should probably just stay there. Now he can play obviously a lot of other positions, but I think all that defensive versatility is going to help make him one of the better everyday defensive second basemen. But just on the basis of hitting, I think alone he's just one of the best at that position. I mean, 2019, 23 homers, 318 average, 384 OBP, 916 OPS with a 143 OPS plus. Like that's really good. 162 hits. This guy just goes out there and he works. He's just a really good ball player. I'm kicking myself for not putting Brandon Lau in top 5. I kind of forgot about him. Dang it. But yeah, I think McNeil's definitely number 2. And I think after he becomes a second baseman full time at some point, I think he's probably going to stay here for a while. So yeah.
It's all right, Cole, because I forgot to put McNeil on my list too. So don't feel bad, because he would certainly be a top 5 guy there as well. Although second base, it should be his primary position. I agree. That's where he's probably going to play this year with Cano finally leaving, which Cano shouldn't be a Met. He should still be a Mariner, but the Mets are dumb. Bertie Van Wagenen sucked. Anyways, I put Ozzie Albies at 2. I'd probably put McNeil at 3. And then move Lau down to 4, and then put Simeon at 5, which would mean Altuve's out of my top 5, which feels wrong, but considering his 2020 season, I think there's an argument for it. But anyways, Ozzie Albies, I think he's way better than his stats say. And last year, he began the year on the injured list, and then when he came back, he tore it up, and then he tore it up in the postseason. He had some very clutch home runs in both games 1 and games 2 of the NLCS, And Ozzie Albies is also, I think, the second best defensive second baseman in all of baseball, behind only Colton Wong, who, like Cole mentioned, borderline top 5 second baseman, and he's won the past 2 Gold Gloves in the National League. And if he wasn't so good, I think Albies would have easily won those. I think, like I said, he's better than his stats say, and I'm a big believer in Albies. I believe that his numbers, like they said in 2019, are more indicative of the type of player that he was in 2020. When you dig deeper into the stats, he was a much better player once he came off the injured list, and was a big part of the reason why the Braves had the best lineup in the National League last year. They were just a couple of breaks away from beating the Dodgers, and everyone talks about how great that Dodgers team was and how historic it was, but the Braves had him, man. They had him on the ropes. Damn you, Braves. Anyways, our top second baseman, it was an easy choice. It's DJ LeMahieu. He's been an MVP finalist the past 2 years. Just been a really good player. Was a really good player in Colorado. He definitely would have been on our top 5 lists, but he would have probably been like the 3, 4, 5 range instead of being number 1. And he's unanimous if you don't think he's number 1. Freddie Freeman's clearly the number 1 first baseman.
Yeah.
But there is some competition there from Abreu and Goldschmidt.
There's no competition with DJ LeMahieu. He
Right.
is arguably the best hitter in baseball. I know you personally disagree, Dom, but there's definitely a case. Hit 364 last year in 50 games, had 13 home runs, 37 RBIs. He was insane. An OPS of 212, OPS plus, sorry. And I don't know what else. Wait, I just looked at the wrong guy. My bad. OPS plus of 175. I was looking at Juan Soto stats to compare because those are
because Juan Soto's the best hitter in baseball.
Those in my opinion are the two best hitters in baseball. But overall, I think DJ LeMahieu has been insane throughout the course of this past season. Ever since he went to New York, he's torn it apart. 327 and 364. His line just with the Yankees, 336, 386, 536 with 129 RBIs and 36 home runs.
It's nuts.
Insanity. I think that easily best second baseman in the league. There's no argument.
Cole,
you got anything else to say about DJ LeMahieu?
I mean, Ryan pretty much covered it, but yeah, I think he's definitely at least a top 3 hitter in baseball. I agree. I think Soto's the best. But I mean, you definitely can't argue with what he's done. It's crazy to think that if Colorado didn't make the dumb decision of signing Daniel Murphy to the same exact contract that the Yankees signed DJ LeMahieu to, they would have probably the best third baseman, second baseman, and shortstop in baseball right now to this day. Also, if they didn't trade Nolan, obviously. But, I mean, it's crazy that all those guys came from the same place. He's been a dog at the plate. I mean, 300 virtually every year. His power numbers have taken an increase because he plays at the T-ball park that is Yankee Stadium. I mean, say what you will about Coors Field. It's got one of the larger outfields in baseball, though. So DJ was
the largest.
Yeah, it's DJ's never been able to hit the amount of home runs that he is going to hit as a Yankee. But the average has always been there. And he's always been able to get on base, and he's always been able to, get the extra base hits as well. And I mean, defensively, he's up there as well. I mean, he plays a mean second base. He's really, really good. And for such a tall and lankier guy, to be that good of an athlete, it's kind of insane to see. He's really fun to watch. Really nimble, quick on his feet. He's got a good arm as well. And again, one of those other guys who's versatile. I mean, ever since he's been a Yankee, he hasn't just solely played second base. He's played a lot of first base. He's played some third base. He could play some shortstop if they really wanted to put him there. Will they? No, probably not. But he can if they would put him there. Just one of the more versatile defenders, one of the best hitters. Again, one of those guys where it's kind of everything you want in a baseball player. He just does everything right. And he's so fundamentally sound. And it's going to be that way for a while. And I'm glad he got his money. And it's going to be exciting to see what he does for the next 6 years, I guess, as a Yankee. But, yeah, I mean, there's no question he's number one. So,
yeah, you mentioned he can play shortstop. Cole, it's more than 0, but if you had to guess, how many innings has DJ LeMahieu played at shortstop in his major league career?
I'm going to go with 5.
You are wrong. It's 4.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's 4.
Look, wow. Huh. Yeah, he's just a really good defender. I mean, he just does everything right. And, again, like every second baseman, I feel like most of them have played other positions. I mean, I asked Ryan before this, is Whit Merrifield still considered a second baseman? And the guy's playing center field. At least I think he is.
I would guess second instead of Nicky Lopez, but he's gonna be in right field this year.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of second basemen who don't just play second base is insane. So I mean, I mean, we say it's a weak position, and I use the term weak lightly because I mean they're still really good players, but the reason why you can't really consider a lot of these guys sole second basemen is because they don't just play there, and I think that's why it's so hard to make a top 5. But I mean, LeMahieu's been probably just one of, if not the best, for so many years because that's where he's consistently played and that's where he's consistently been good. So, I mean, that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this position gets overlooked, and people say it's weak and I think it's weak compared to some other positions. And I think that's a fair assessment to it. But second basemen are certainly good. Another second baseman I want to give a shout out to is David Fletcher. He's kind of the GOAT, but did not crack my top 5. And when you consider the names in front of him, I don't think he deserves to. So that's going to wrap up this episode of Golden Sombrero. Another great episode with you guys. Love talking baseball with you two. Pitchers and catchers report this week. So next week we'll give our top 5 relief pitchers, starting pitchers, and catchers. I made that executive decision, but I think it fits. So we'll talk about that, and of course any other moves that happen. The dominoes are starting to fall. Games are played this month in a couple of weeks. Hopefully I'll be able to go to some spring training games. But thank you all for tuning into this episode of Golden Sombrero. On behalf of Cole Bradley and Ryan Blank, signing off, and we'll see you guys next Saturday.